Anthony Davis, but he was the second best player on the championship team. When Luka wins the championship, by the way, he just led them to the finals last year. It's been all NBA 5 times. He's going to be the best player on the championship team. So to me, it seems like they didn't want to pay Luka.
I'm going to go with an easy one for me.
Yeah.
And this, hopefully this is non-controversial, but he was my teammate, and he's also one of the best players in the world. And to coach in the NBA, you need one of the best players in the world. It's Luka.
Just the excitement of being able to add a caliber player like that, a generational talent like that to our franchise, is something that's given me energy.
The NBA has witnessed plenty of blockbuster trades, moves that shake up rosters and redefine championship races. But this was a different level of shocking. Luka Dončić, the face of the Dallas Mavericks, shipped off to the Los Angeles Lakers. A move no one saw coming, a decision that left fans, analysts, and even players scrambling for answers. A generational talent, gone, just like that. And as the dust settles, the shock hasn't faded. If anything, the debate is only heating up. At first, the biggest question was simple. Why? What could possibly make the Mavericks part ways with? Their franchise superstar? Was there locker room tension, a behind-the-scenes power struggle? Or was something even bigger happening behind closed doors? Speculation spread like wildfire. Was this about basketball strategy? Or did politics and control play a bigger role? Every theory seemed more outrageous than the last, but soon the conversation took a sharp turn. It wasn't just about why Luka was traded, it was about how Dallas handled it. Instead of a clean break, the Mavericks front office went on the defensive. Suddenly, reports surfaced questioning Luka's conditioning, leadership, and attitude. The message? Maybe they weren't so crazy to move on from him after all. But not everyone was buying it. NBA legends, former players, and even Luka's ex-teammates spoke out, pushing back against the sudden wave of criticism. This wasn't just a shocking trade anymore. It was a battle over Luka's reputation, and no one hit harder than Matt Barnes. Never one to hold back, Barnes tore into the Mavericks' leadership in a fiery podcast rant, calling out what he saw as an unnecessary smear campaign. His words struck a chord, and soon more voices joined the fight. Today, we're breaking down the biggest reactions from players, analysts, and insiders who refuse to let this story slide. Because love him or hate him, one thing is certain: Luka. Dončić's greatness won't be overshadowed by front office politics.
Mr. DeMont, take a step back, take a seat. You know nothing about hard work or what it takes to be great. You married into money. Sit with this trade that you made. Hopefully Anthony Davis gets healthy, and I wish Dallas Mavericks the best moving forward. But shut the up, man. We all know how good Luka is. We don't give a what you have to say. Just sit back and be an owner.
Matt Barnes didn't just call out the Mavericks, he obliterated them. In a no-holds-barred rant, he painted a harsh picture of an out-of-touch billionaire who inherited power but lacked the vision to build a real contender. And let's be honest, he's not the only one who thinks that. The moment Luka Dončić was traded to the Lakers, the NBA world was left speechless. How does a franchise justify moving on from a 25-year-old generational superstar? Fans, players, and analysts were stunned, expecting answers. But instead of taking responsibility, the Mavericks tried something else: damage control. Almost immediately, stories started circulating: Luka's conditioning, his leadership, his supposed shortcomings. It felt like the organization was working overtime to convince the world that trading him was the right move. But for NBA veterans like Barnes, that kind of spin is unacceptable. If there's one thing former players can't stand, it's front offices disrespecting greatness. Luka wasn't just traded, he was scapegoated. And if Dallas thought they could control the narrative and move on quietly, Barnes made sure that wasn't happening. But he wasn't the only one taking a stand. Enter Paul Pierce, the Celtics legend, wasn't buying any of it. To him, this trade wasn't about basketball, it was about ego. On a recent podcast, Pierce didn't hold back, questioning how Dallas could turn its back on the very player who defined their future. In his eyes, this wasn't just a bad decision, it was a betrayal. And with voices like Barnes and Pierce speaking out, one thing is certain: the Mavericks front office won't be escaping this firestorm anytime soon.
Man, it's just like, it's some egos that got involved in all of this. Like, you traded the whole future, the whole face, the whole city was on his back, and you just said, we don't need you. Like, seriously? this is one of the most unprecedented things I've ever seen. Like, where do they go if they don't make the playoffs? Because they made this trade thinking like right now.
Paul Pierce isn't holding back. He's asking the tough questions, the ones the Mavericks would rather avoid. Because this wasn't just about moving Luka Dončić. Dallas put everything on the line, betting their entire future on a move that has no safety net, no second chances, just all in with no guarantees. But why take such a massive risk? That's where Pierce's theory gets interesting. He doesn't see this as just a basketball decision. This was about control. Someone high up in the Mavericks chain of command, whether in the front office or ownership, wanted to make a statement. Was Luka becoming too powerful? Was there tension behind closed doors? Did the organization make this move to remind everyone who's in charge? Because let's be real, you don't trade a generational talent like Luka unless there's more to the story. And if Dallas fails to make the playoffs, this won't just go down as a bad trade. It'll be one of the worst front office blunders in NBA history. But Pierce isn't the only one calling out the Mavericks. Jalen Rose has seen plenty of questionable trades. But this one? This might be the most reckless yet. For Rose, the real issue isn't just losing Luka, it's Dallas refusing to commit to greatness. During a heated debate, he torched the Mavericks for failing to appreciate what they had and making a move that could haunt them for years to come. Because in the NBA, you don't just stumble across a superstar like Luka. When you have one, you do everything to keep him. Dallas, they let him walk. And now, they're the ones left scrambling.
To me, it seems like they didn't want to pay Luka. So for me, if you don't want to pay Luka, then just sell the team. That's how I feel about it. Because if you ain't going to pay somebody to accomplish what he's accomplished already, I don't know where the money going to come from somebody else.
Jalen Rose didn't just criticize the Mavericks. He questioned their entire direction. Because let's be real, if you're not willing to invest in a generational talent, what exactly are you doing? This isn't a borderline all-star. This isn't a player with an uncertain future. This is Luka Dončić, one of the most dominant young superstars the NBA has seen in decades. Instead of securing their future by building around him, Dallas let him walk? For what? To save money? To avoid a supermax contract? That's not just a bad decision. It's a franchise-altering disaster. Now, Dallas isn't just scrambling to replace Luka's production, they're scrambling to justify to their fans why they refuse to pay for one of the most valuable players in the league. And Rose didn't sugarcoat it. If you're not willing to pay for a superstar like Luka, maybe you shouldn't own a team in the first place. Avery Johnson. This trade makes no sense. When you've been around the NBA as long as Avery Johnson, you've seen it all. Brilliant trades, questionable trades, and trades that defy all logic. And for him, Luka's trade falls squarely in that last category. The former NBA champion, coach, and analyst took to social media to express his disbelief, struggling to understand how the Mavericks could justify letting go of a generational talent. Because some moves are risky, some are controversial, and then there are moves you simply don't make. Trading Luka Dončić, it might go down as one of the worst decisions in NBA history.
No way. No way, no way. Now, Luka's 25 years old, and sure, there's been some situations defensively where he can improve, obviously the communication onslaught with the referees, but this type of talent doesn't come around that many times in a lifetime.
That last point, that's the key. Talent like Luka Dončić doesn't come around often. Avery Johnson's reaction cuts straight to the heart of the debate. Luka isn't just an all-star, he's not just a superstar. He's a once-in-a-generation player, the kind of talent a franchise builds around for 15 years, not trades away at 25. Sure, Luka isn't perfect. His defense isn't elite. His frustration with referees can be a lot. But if those are the reasons you're moving on from a player of his caliber, maybe the problem isn't Luka, maybe it's you. Because what happens if Luka levels up even further in Los Angeles? What if he wins an MVP? What if Dallas just threw away their best shot at a championship because they focused on his flaws instead of his greatness? Avery Johnson has won at the highest level, and from his perspective, Dallas just made one of the worst mistakes in NBA history. But while Johnson focused on the basketball disaster, another former Mavericks insider exposed something even bigger: the people behind the decision. If anyone understands how the Mavericks operate behind the scenes, it's Bob Voulgaris. A former team executive, sports bettor, and analytics guru, Voulgaris had a front row seat to the inner workings of the franchise. So when the post-trade criticism of Luka started piling up, he wasn't buying it. In a scathing podcast episode, he called out everyone trying to rewrite history, blasting the sudden push to discredit Luka's leadership, conditioning, and attitude. Because to him, this wasn't just about moving on from a superstar. This was about a franchise desperately trying to justify one of the most puzzling trades the league has ever seen. And the more time passes, the clearer one thing becomes. The Mavericks might have lost way more than just Luka Dončić.
The people who are critiquing him had no business. I'm sorry, but those people have not accomplished anything. They're not accomplished individuals. Who are they to be talking about what it takes to win? That's the part that I found really, really offensive. What have you done in your life that allows you to, you're in charge of the team and so you're beholden to that. But also, come on, give me a break. What have you inherited a pretty good roster. You inherited a generational superstar. Have a little bit more humility.
This wasn't just a defense of Luka Dončić. This was a direct attack on the Mavericks front office. Bob Voulgaris didn't sugarcoat it. He ripped into the decision makers for acting like they were the masterminds behind Luka's rise, when in reality, they just got lucky. And he's right. Luka wasn't the first overall pick. The Mavericks didn't develop him into a superstar. From the moment he stepped on an NBA court, he was already him. Yet now, after shipping him off, these same executives are trying to rewrite the narrative, acting like he wasn't the perfect franchise player or didn't fit their vision. To Voulgaris, that's not just misguided, it's flat out disrespectful. Because if you're handed a future Hall of Famer and still fail to build a championship team around him, maybe the issue was never the player. Maybe it was you all along. Shaquille O'Neal calls out. Dallas, what were they thinking? If there's one NBA legend who never bites his tongue, it's Shaquille O'Neal. The four-time champion, Hall of Famer, and straight shooter has seen his share of front office disasters. But this trade? Shaq wasn't buying it. In a recent interview, he blasted the Mavericks, demanding an explanation for a move that still makes zero sense. Because let's be real, when a trade is this shocking, there are only two possibilities. It's either a bore, stroke of genius, or it's an all-time franchise blunder. And right now, Dallas is looking like the latter.
And the treachery of the business of basketball, which people just come out and say. I want Nico to say, this is why we trade him. Nobody's really giving an answer. We want to know. Dirk wants to know. Mark Cuban wants to know. All of Dallas wants to know why you trade one of the best players in the league.
And that's the real issue. Nobody knows why this happened. The Mavericks still haven't given a clear, honest explanation for why they traded away one of the most dominant young stars in NBA history. Instead, they've dodged questions, thrown out vague statements, and let wild rumors take over. But here's the thing. Shaq, and just about everyone else, aren't buying it. Because let's be real, if Dallas had a legitimate reason, wouldn't they have said it by now? Shaq's frustration echoes what fans, analysts, and even Mavericks legends are feeling. You don't trade away Luka Dončić without a franchise-altering reason. But Shaq didn't stop there. In another segment, the Big Diesel turned his attention to Luka himself. Amid all the noise, all the criticism, and all the uncertainty, how is Luka responding? Because if there's one thing NBA history has proven, it's this. When great players feel disrespected, they come back with a vengeance. And if that's what's coming next, the Mavericks might have just made their biggest mistake yet.